Today is June 8th, 2026. What President Trump revealed from the Oval Office on June 4th was the most detailed operational disclosure regarding a rejected ground mission that any American president has publicly discussed in modern military history. This was not a vague acknowledgement that military options had been examined. It was not a broad statement that contingency planning existed. Trump stated that JSOC, the Joint Special Operations Command, developed and presented a plan at the highest levels of the United States government. According to that plan, Delta Force and SEAL Team 6 personnel would enter central Iran aboard MH-47 Chinooks departing from U.S. Navy vessels positioned in the Arabian Sea. They would establish a forward arming and refueling location within Iranian territory. C-17 Globemaster aircraft would then transport specialized drilling systems, nuclear containment containers, and Department of Energy render-safe teams to the target area. Their objective would be the physical recovery of 972 pounds of enriched uranium trapped beneath hundreds of meters of collapsed granite created by B-2 Spirit strikes using GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators. The operation was not hypothetical. It was designed, prepared, and briefed. Trump explained why he declined to authorize it with 4 words. "I didn't feel like being Jimmy Carter." For those unfamiliar with the reference, Jimmy Carter approved Operation Eagle Claw in 1980. That complex mission involved helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft entering Iranian territory to rescue American hostages held in Tehran. 8 American service members lost their lives when helicopters and C-130 aircraft collided during a desert dust storm before the force could reach its objective. The operation never came close to completing its mission. Carter's presidency never fully recovered from that failure. It remains the most consequential operational disaster in American special operations history. That was the event Trump cited when describing why he rejected the uranium recovery mission. Yet the decision to reject the operation does not make it unimportant. In fact, it makes the plan one of the most significant pieces of operational information available to the current diplomatic process. Trump also made another statement from the Oval Office that Iranian officials must evaluate with the same precision used by the planners who created the mission. He said, "I don't think they could stop us if they wanted." That remark, delivered on live television, was not accidental. It communicated a specific message. The capability exists. The president has been briefed on it. He judged it executable. The only reason it has not occurred is a presidential decision that could be reconsidered. To understand why this matters, several elements must be viewed together. The 972 pounds of uranium enriched to 60%, the material buried beneath hundreds of meters of collapsed granite at Fordo and Natanz, the JSOC operation Trump confirmed and rejected, the historical shadow of Operation Eagle Claw that influenced the decision, the 2-week exposure window that would leave any extraction force vulnerable, the Iranian response that would begin the moment American personnel crossed the border, the operational structure necessary for success. And the reason Trump's disclosure of both the plan and its rejection has become one of the most strategically significant diplomatic messages of the conflict. As of June 7th, 2026, every part of that picture must be considered at once. Trump confirmed on June 4th that JSOC had prepared a plan to recover Iran's enriched uranium stockpile from the underground tunnel complexes damaged by B-2 Spirit strikes employing GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators. The proposal called for Delta Force and SEAL Team 6 operators to arrive aboard MH-47 Chinooks from the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, known as the Night Stalkers. The aircraft would launch from U.S. Navy ships in the Arabian Sea. A forward arming and refueling position would be established inside Iran. Supporting C-17. Globemaster transports would carry drilling systems, precision excavation equipment, nuclear containment vessels certified for highly enriched uranium transport, and Department of Energy render-safe specialists trained specifically for weapons of mass destruction scenarios. The mission would require a security perimeter lasting 2 weeks around the extraction site. That perimeter would have to withstand concentrated attacks from IRGC forces directing every available asset against a fixed location, unable to move until the uranium recovery was complete. Trump described the challenge directly. "It's not going to be like Venezuela. You have to be there for 2 weeks. You'd need massive equipment. You'd have to airlift the equipment." He then added, "I don't think they could stop us if they wanted." The uranium stockpile is estimated at 972 pounds, enriched to 60%, only a short distance from the 90% threshold commonly defined as weapons-grade material. It remains buried beneath hundreds of meters of granite within collapsed tunnel complexes at Fordo in Qom province and Natanz in Isfahan province. At the same time, Russian forces struck the switchyard connected to the Zaporizhzhia thermal power plant on the morning of June 4th. That facility carried the only remaining power line supplying Europe's largest nuclear installation. The IAEA immediately described the situation as a serious concern. It marked the facility's 17th blackout since 2022 and its 5th during 2026. That is the complete operational picture. Trump's Oval Office disclosure serves as the starting point for analysis, and it must be interpreted for what it actually represents rather than its surface appearance. American presidents normally avoid confirming or denying contingency plans, special operations capabilities, or classified operational concepts. Such confirmation can provide adversaries with valuable information about military capabilities, planning priorities, and the intelligence foundation supporting those plans. By publicly confirming the uranium extraction proposal, Trump departed from that long-standing practice. The reason appears specific. By confirming that the plan existed, that it was created by JSOC, that it was presented at the highest levels, that he personally believed it could succeed, and that the only reason it was not approved was his own judgment rather than military infeasibility. Trump delivered a clear message to both Iranian diplomatic and military leadership. The message was straightforward. The United States can take the uranium. The question is whether Iran compels that outcome. The diplomatic effort being pursued through the Omani back channel and any additional communications routes represents the alternative to the plan JSOC developed, and Trump chose not to authorize. That message changes the position of the uranium as a negotiating instrument. Its value depends on Iran's belief that the material remains inaccessible unless Tehran voluntarily agrees to surrender it through a negotiated settlement. If the United States can credibly demonstrate that it possesses the ability to recover the uranium without Iranian cooperation, then the nature of that bargaining chip changes. It no longer becomes an asset controlled entirely by Iran. Instead, it becomes an asset controlled only so long as the presidential decision not to execute the JSOC plan remains unchanged. The condition of the uranium itself is equally important. The 972 pounds enriched to 60% are not merely numbers on a diplomatic balance sheet. They represent the material whose status determines whether the third requirement among the 6 red lines can be resolved through verification rather than additional military action. Highly enriched uranium is categorized according to enrichment levels. This refers to the percentage of the fissile uranium-235 isotope relative to the more abundant uranium-238 isotope within the material. Natural uranium contains approximately 0.7% uranium-235. Low-enriched uranium, commonly used in civilian nuclear reactors, generally falls between 3 and 5%. Highly enriched uranium begins at the 20% threshold, while weapons-grade material is typically enriched to 90% or higher. Iran's 60% stockpile does not meet the formal definition of weapons-grade material. However, it occupies a very specific position along the enrichment pathway. Moving from 60% to 90% requires far less effort than progressing from reactor-grade 5% to 90%. For that reason, the 60% stockpile represents the near-final stage in producing material suitable for nuclear weapons. Its proximity to weapons-grade status explains why the third requirement among the 6 red lines focuses on recovering this highly enriched material. Fulfillment of that requirement is central to any diplomatic resolution of the nuclear issue. The GBU-57 strikes at Fordo destroyed centrifuge cascades that had been enriching additional uranium to 60% and beyond. What they did not destroy was the material already enriched before those attacks occurred. Instead, the uranium became trapped beneath hundreds of meters of granite and collapsed tunnel infrastructure whose structural integrity was shattered by the detonations. The uranium is inaccessible, but it is not destroyed. It remains entombed. That physical condition means it is neither an active weapons capability nor a permanently eliminated proliferation risk. It remains a future problem whose ultimate status depends on events yet to come. One possibility is a negotiated settlement involving verified removal under international supervision. Another is a future scenario in which a reconstituted Iranian nuclear program attempts to recover it. Trump confirmed from the Oval Office that the material remains underground. That statement is important not only as an update on inventory status, but because it directly addresses arguments that the Fordo strikes resolved the issue. The issue remains unresolved. The uranium is buried, not destroyed. And the solution to 972 pounds of uranium enriched to 60%, trapped underground yet still intact, is either a negotiated removal verified through international mechanisms or the operational plan that Trump confirmed existed and ultimately declined to authorize. The next question is what the GBU-57 and the B-2 strikes actually achieved at Fordo and Natanz, and what they failed to achieve. That distinction between destruction and burial is the exact gap the uranium recovery plan was intended to address. The GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator is the largest conventional weapon currently deployed in the active United States military inventory. Weighing 30,000 pounds, it is an aircraft-delivered, GPS-guided, hardened steel penetration munition engineered to defeat deeply protected underground facilities. It achieves this through kinetic penetration before a delayed explosion occurs at depth. Only the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber can carry this weapon. No other aircraft in the American arsenal combines the payload capacity and low observable characteristics necessary to deliver a 30,000-pound munition through defended airspace against a hardened underground objective without detection and engagement before release. At Fordo, the strikes achieved their intended structural effects. Tunnel complexes housing the centrifuge cascades collapsed. Access shafts leading to underground chambers were blocked. Infrastructure linking the facility to the surface, including power systems, cooling networks, and communications connections, was severed. The centrifuge cascade itself was destroyed through the combined effects of blast pressure and the collapse of the chambers containing it. As a result, the facility responsible for producing weapons-grade enriched uranium and supporting advancement of the nuclear program's enrichment capability is no longer functional. What the strikes did not achieve was the complete destruction of the enriched uranium already produced before the attacks. That was the point Trump confirmed from the Oval Office. Uranium is a dense heavy metal. It remains chemically stable and is not easily dispersed by blast effects in the way lighter materials can be. Materials stored within the Fordo underground chambers, whether as uranium hexafluoride gas or solid uranium compounds, experienced the blast and collapse environment but was not vaporized, scattered beyond the tunnel network, or rendered harmless. It remains beneath the debris. It is buried under layers of rubble and beneath hundreds of meters of collapsed granite. Yet it is still physically present. In principle, it remains recoverable. It also remains a proliferation concern if future conditions ever permit retrieval. To understand why Trump referenced Operation Eagle Claw, it is necessary to examine the operation itself and why that comparison shaped his decision regarding the JSOC proposal. Operation Eagle Claw was the hostage rescue mission approved by President Carter in April of 1980. Its objective was the recovery of 53 American hostages held at the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. The operation depended on a complicated combination of forces. RH-53D Sea Stallion helicopters launched from the USS Nimitz. EC-130 tanker aircraft and C-130 assault transports were required to rendezvous at a desert location inside Iran known as Desert 1. After refueling there, the force would continue toward a staging position near Tehran for the final phase of the mission. Mechanical failures reduced the number of operational helicopters below the minimum required for success. The mission commander advised cancellation. Carter approved the abort. During withdrawal, one of the remaining helicopters collided with a C-130 tanker amid darkness and dust storm conditions. 8 American service members were killed. 5 additional aircraft were left behind at Desert 1. The lessons Eagle Claw provides for the uranium recovery mission are direct and measurable. The operation did not fail because the concept itself was flawed. It failed because the supporting architecture proved inadequate. The platform mix, helicopter maintenance conditions, contingency planning for equipment failures, and authority structure surrounding mission cancellation were insufficient for the operation's complexity. The uranium extraction proposal carried greater complexity in nearly every category. Eagle Claw involved exposure to Iranian airspace measured in hours. The uranium mission required 2 weeks. Eagle Claw relied on a relatively small force designed for speed. The uranium operation required a force designed to maintain combat effectiveness inside a fixed defensive perimeter, while conducting a mission that could not be completed quickly, regardless of battlefield conditions. The comparison Trump made between the uranium plan and Eagle Claw was therefore not a casual historical reference. It represented a specific assessment of risk. The same factors that contributed to Eagle Claw's disaster were present in the uranium proposal. Extended exposure, multi-platform logistics, vulnerability created by a fixed position. In every category, those challenges existed at a larger scale. Yet Trump did not say the mission was impossible. He said he chose not to approve it. The phrase, "I didn't feel like being Jimmy Carter," places the decision in the realm of presidential judgment regarding acceptable risk, rather than a military conclusion that the operation could not be carried out. Trump assessed that American forces possessed the capability to execute the mission. He assessed that the IRGC could not prevent it. What led him to reject the proposal was the risk associated with maintaining a fixed position inside Iran for 2 weeks, while facing an IRGC force capable of concentrating all available assets against a known location. Instead, other options remained available: continued diplomatic pressure, additional GBU-57 strikes if deemed necessary, or a negotiated settlement that includes verified removal of the uranium. The next consideration is how Iran would likely respond the moment MH-47 Chinooks from the Night Stalkers crossed the border toward the uranium site. That response represents a critical part of the operational picture that many discussions of the disclosure have understated. The IRGC would not respond with the distributed harassment tactics often seen against commercial shipping. The regime would likely view the operation as an existential security threat. Its response would therefore focus on concentrating every available asset against a single known target: drones, ground forces, artillery, mortars, manpads, teams. Once the operation began, the IRGC would likely determine the site's GPS coordinates within hours. The Shahed 136 one-way attack drone carries a 50-kilogram warhead and possesses a range of approximately 2,500 kilometers. A defensive perimeter extending 3 to 4 miles around the extraction site would remain within reach of a Shahed, launched from virtually any location in central or western Iran. Even after 100 days of attrition, the remaining IRGC drone inventory would likely be directed toward what would become the highest value target of the conflict. Defensive systems inside the perimeter, including Avenger platforms, shore assets, man-portable interceptors, and APKWS-equipped aircraft already used against Shahed threats throughout the conflict, could engage a substantial portion of incoming drones. However, a sustained drone campaign directed against a fixed position for 2 weeks creates a fundamentally different operational environment. Operations over the Strait of Hormuz involve mobility. The extraction force would not be mobile. A fixed location unable to relocate while a drone campaign continues must absorb cumulative risk across 336 hours of uninterrupted operations. The threat posed by IRGC ground forces adds another layer. Approximately 150,000 IRGC personnel within the broader region surrounding Fordo and Natanz create a challenge that the extraction force would need to manage continuously for 14 days. Even with support from special operations forces and conventional air power, that requirement differs significantly from operations lasting only hours. Trump's comparison to the F-15E WSO recovery mission illustrates part of the issue, but not all of it. That operation involved limited duration contact against an IRGC force that was not pre-positioned, did not anticipate the mission, and could not rapidly recover after the 160th SOAR and Delta Force eliminated the initial response element. The Uranium operation would be different. 14 days. A known location. An IRGC force with hours to begin concentrating assets and 336 hours to continue doing so. The concentration of MANPAD's teams becomes a particular vulnerability under those circumstances. As discussed in previous analysis of the F-15 shootdown, operators equipped with MANPADs positioned on elevated terrain surrounding a fixed site can establish overlapping engagement zones covering every approach route used by supporting aircraft. Air power protecting a moving force can continuously alter routes to reduce exposure. Air power protecting a fixed position for 2 weeks cannot. Aircraft must repeatedly return to the same area. Meanwhile, MANPAD's operators, positioned on surrounding ridgelines, gain repeated opportunities to study those routes and wait for favorable engagement geometry. The airlift component adds another challenge. The role of the C-17 Globemaster III in transporting drilling equipment, nuclear containment vessels, and Department of Energy render-safe teams represents the logistical burden Trump described as the massive equipment problem. The requirement for a forward arming and refueling point inside Iranian territory further increases complexity. The C-17 Globemaster III serves as the primary strategic and tactical airlift platform of the United States Air Force. With a maximum weight of 585,000 pounds, it possesses the capacity required to transport the heavy equipment essential to the extraction mission. That equipment includes specialized drilling systems, capable of penetrating hundreds of meters of collapsed granite while maintaining structural stability for excavation teams. It includes nuclear containment vessels certified for highly enriched uranium transport and sized for the estimated inventory of 972 pounds. It includes the equipment used by Department of Energy render-safe teams, including monitoring systems, protective equipment, specialized tools, and transport containers required for counter-weapons of mass destruction operations. None of that equipment can be transported by helicopter. Every piece of equipment required for the uranium recovery mission depends on fixed-wing heavy airlift. The cargo must arrive either from the nearest available base or through a forward arming and refueling point established inside Iranian territory. That forward arming and refueling point is not a minor detail. It is a separate operational concept that demands the creation and defense of a second position before the main extraction effort can even begin. MH-47. Chinooks operated by the Night Stalkers and launching from U.S. Navy vessels in the Arabian Sea possess a combat radius that makes flights to Fordo in Qom province or Natanz in Isfahan province technically possible. Yet, such missions become operationally marginal without an internal refueling stop. The FARP solves that range problem by extending operational reach. At the same time, it creates another challenge. Instead of defending one location inside Iran, the force must protect two: the extraction site itself and the refueling position supporting it. The experience from the F-15E WSO recovery mission becomes an important planning reference. During that operation, C-130 aircraft landed on an improvised airstrip near Isfahan to support the recovery effort. Those aircraft became stuck. A C-130. Hercules has an approximate maximum gross weight of 155,000 pounds, A C-17 Globemaster reaches 585,000 pounds. That is nearly 4 times the weight of the C-130 operating from the same type of improvised surface. The drilling systems, containment vessels, and Department of Energy equipment add significant payload beyond the aircraft's empty weight. Unlike a paved international airport with engineered load-bearing infrastructure, any fixed-wing landing area inside Iran would likely consist of the best available flat terrain within the operational zone. That creates a surface strength problem. A 585,000-pound aircraft places demands on the landing surface that greatly exceed those already demonstrated by the C-130 incident. Another key element of Trump's Oval Office remarks was his statement that he did not believe Iran could stop the operation if it chose to resist. That sentence served a different purpose than his explanation for rejecting the plan. It deserves separate attention. When a president declines a military option and then publicly states that the military could successfully execute it, he is doing more than confirming the plan exists. He is transforming the rejected operation into a diplomatic instrument. Iranian leadership receives 2 messages simultaneously. The first message is that the United States chose not to recover the uranium through military force. The second is that the United States believes it possesses the ability to recover the uranium by force, and that Iranian forces could not prevent it. The first message leaves room for a negotiated outcome that includes verified removal of the uranium. The second message defines the consequence if diplomacy fails. The alternative is not indefinite burial of the material. The alternative is the operational concept Trump confirmed had already been developed, briefed, and judged executable. Viewed through that framework, the uranium's strategic value changes. Iran's public position has maintained that the uranium will remain under Iranian control. Tehran has argued that any agreement must preserve sovereignty over its nuclear material, and that surrendering the enriched stockpile is not part of the diplomatic path, regardless of other concessions. That position depends on 2 assumptions. First, that the uranium cannot be removed without Iranian approval, because it lies beneath hundreds of meters of granite. Second, that agreeing to surrender it would carry unacceptable political costs, given the institutional interests of the IRGC in maintaining the nuclear program's status. Trump's Oval Office disclosure addressed both assumptions. The first was addressed through confirmation that an excavation and recovery plan exists and is considered executable. The second was addressed by refusing to authorize the mission while making clear that it remains available as an option. The diplomatic route remains open, but the operational alternative remains present if negotiations fail to produce uranium removal. At the same time, another nuclear-related event unfolded. Russian forces struck the switchyard serving the Zaporizhzhia nuclear facility on the morning of June 4th. The switchyard functions as the electrical connection between the plant and the external power grid. That grid connection supplies the primary electricity required for cooling the plant's 6 reactor units. Since the early stages of the Ukraine conflict, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant has faced recurring threats involving loss of cooling power. The IAEA has monitored the situation continuously, as normal grid connections have repeatedly been disrupted by military activity surrounding the facility. The June 4th strike marked the 17th blackout since 2022. It was also the 5th blackout recorded during 2026. The IAEA immediately classified the incident as a serious concern. The concern remains unchanged from previous Zaporizhzhia events. If cooling systems lose electrical power and emergency diesel generators cannot maintain cooling indefinitely, reactor fuel can overheat to the point of damage or release. Nuclear facilities require uninterrupted cooling, even after shutdown. Heat generated by radioactive decay continues long after reactor operations cease and must be managed through active cooling systems. The 17th blackout since 2022 highlights a broader pattern. For 4 years, the Zaporizhzhia facility has existed in a recurring state of crisis. Its safety has depended repeatedly on emergency diesel generators, whose fuel supply relies on logistics networks operating within an active conflict zone. Each new incident adds stress to backup systems originally designed for emergencies, rather than years of intermittent primary power loss. When all these developments are considered together, several tracks converge at the same point. Trump's disclosure of the uranium recovery plan, his Eagle Claw comparison, assessments of potential IRGC responses, the airlift architecture required for execution, and the attack affecting Zaporizhzhia. Together, they define a moment where diplomatic and military paths are approaching the same decision point. The uranium track establishes that 972 pounds of uranium enriched to 60% remains buried but intact beneath Fordo and Natanz. The recovery plan exists. It has been evaluated as executable. The president rejected it because of risk considerations, rather than doubts about capability. The diplomatic alternative remains an Iranian agreement permitting verified removal of the material under 6 Red Lines framework. The operational track shows what such a mission would require. Night Stalkers delivering Delta Force and SEAL Team 6, a forward arming and refueling point inside Iran. C-17 heavy airlift carrying Department of Energy render-safe teams and specialized equipment. A 2-week defensive perimeter facing concentrated IRGC ground forces, Shahed drone attacks, Manpad's threats, and the landing surface challenges created by the weight of the aircraft involved. The strategic communication track shows Trump publicly confirming the plan, confirming the capability behind it, and confirming his decision not to approve it at this time. The purpose was to influence Iranian calculations regarding whether negotiated removal of the uranium is less costly than the alternative. The nuclear risk track adds the Zaporizhzhia incident as a second major nuclear infrastructure event within 24 hours, demonstrating that nuclear-related risks are being tested simultaneously across 2 separate conflict zones. As of June 7, 2026, one fact remains unchanged. The uranium is still there. The recovery plan has been designed, briefed, and judged executable. The president rejected it while invoking the most significant special operations failure ever experienced by the United States inside Iran. He then publicly stated that he does not believe Iran could stop the mission if authorization were granted. 2 interpretations emerge from that sequence. One interpretation is that the disclosure serves as the final leverage tool needed to transform indirect exchanges through Oman into genuine negotiations. Under this view, publicly informing Iran that the uranium can be recovered by force, while simultaneously offering a diplomatic alternative, creates the cost-benefit calculation necessary for agreement on verified removal. The second interpretation is that the disclosure changes nothing. Under that view, the IRGC's position remains tied to the belief that surrendering the uranium would amount to acknowledging defeat of the nuclear program, a conclusion the institution cannot accept, regardless of American capabilities. Yet both interpretations arrive at the same destination. The uranium remains buried but recoverable. The plan remains available. The president has chosen not to authorize it while making clear that he could. Iran now possesses the information necessary to determine whether a negotiated agreement concerning removal of the uranium is preferable to the alternative that remains available. The exchange of messages through Oman, which the foreign minister carefully distinguished from formal negotiations, remains the channel through which that decision will eventually be communicated. 972 pounds of uranium enriched to 60%. Hundreds of meters of granite above it. A JSOC recovery plan beneath the discussion, and a president who stated that he could order its retrieval chose not to do so and ensured that Iran understood both realities at the same time. If you found this analysis valuable, follow for more in-depth military, geopolitical, and strategic content examining the events shaping the global security environment. Please leave your thoughts about this content in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.